Let's start off with a introduction to plants. I think all too often when you start an exploration of plants, you start right into plant morphology or right into the differences between plants. And I think it's very important to talk about and introduce plants and ask the why. Why do we study plants? I will share this very first slide for you. This is a plant called Metrosideros polymorpha, or Ohia alahua. It is the most ubiquitous plant that you find in the Hawaiian Islands. And just for a little bit of context, it's a very important plant to study because it's a pioneer organism, it's a climax organism, it's an organism that actually differently expresses its genes based on the environmental conditions it's expressed with, which is significant because plants really don't have the ability to go inside on a hot day. They don't have the ability to put on a blanket if they're getting cold, and so plants sort of have to sit out there and take whatever the environment dishes out, and this plant is a master at doing so. Why else would we study plants? Well, plants have some amazing morphology, some shapes. Go ahead and click out of this video and watch the Doodling for Spirals in Math class, a very neat video talking about how Fibonacci sequences are related to plant morphologies. Plants can also be quite valuable, and you're not seeing a typo there. That is a $20,000 orchid. You can find that on the Big Island of Hawaii. Plants can be very large. There was a redwood in California that you used to be able to drive your car through until somebody drove their car into it, but you used to be able to drive your car right through the heart of that tree. And here are some of the oldest, biggest, largest, tallest plants. Look at this wonderful old plants, wonderful large plants, and they really represent some extreme conditions in our environment and ecosystems. Plants also have some neat legends and tales. The baobab tree here, there's a link right there where you can go for the legend. Apparently, at some point in time, this plant was replanted upside down, which is why it looks like it has its roots on top. And some very, very cool stories that come behind these different plants. So you can see that it's a huge plant. Plants can also be very small. This is the smallest plant, smallest flowering plant in the world. This is called duckweed or lemonaceae. And each one of these tiny, tiny little plants is an individual flowering plant. So plants can be big, they can be small. Plants can be important to us culturally. This is a very important plant to the Hawaiian people. It's called taro or kalo. And it's really neat to talk about the stories that are behind the cultural exploration of these plants. This plant is also very useful for a lot of different reasons. It can be used as a food source, which is important. It's also a completely sustainable plant. So we talk about the use of plants by people. It's a special branch of science called ethnobotany, and that's a very, very interesting to talk about these stories and talk about these uses that people use these plants for. Plants can also be beautiful. And not just the flowers, you can also find beauty in the vegetative portions. Plants can also be rare and endangered. This is a plant that you may have heard me reference before. This is Kanaloa laviensis. In the upper left-hand corner is the periwinkle. The periwinkle, even though it's an ubiquitous plant, holds two chemicals that make up the cure for childhood leukemia. Childhood leukemia, which once considered a death sentence for a child that got it, is now about 90% curable thanks to vinblastine and vincristine. We find those two chemical products in the periwinkle flower. Now looking at the plant in the bottom right-hand corner, Kanaloa laviensis, and again you may have heard me talk about this before, is a plant that I actually got to watch go extinct. And the question that I ask, or the question that I implore you to think about, is what childhood disease, what planetary disease, what food source, what anything could be derived from Kanaloa laviensis? And the obvious answer is nothing. It's gone. It's a species that has gone completely extinct. And so when we talk about the importance of plants, we can talk about the uses for our own beings, for our own use, for our own benefit. And that's why we should keep plants alive. Well, maybe you really can't get into plants as endangered species, but you love things like panda bears. Well, if you want to save the panda bears, stop cutting down the forests that the panda bears live in. I.e., when you look at the importance of plants as habitat, it becomes very important to things like the endangered species movement. Protecting the plant habitat will also affect subsequent species. So you want to save the panda bear, you better save the plants. And when we talk about the destruction of forests, we deforest an area of plants roughly the size of Hungary every year. You also look at that picture and you see the indiscriminate death of a habitat. Who knows what flowering plants lie underneath those timbers that have been killed? Who knows what animals may have lived in those habitats that may have been killed or moved on? And so when we talk about the conservation of our forests, we're talking about the conservation of an entire ecosystem and all of the secrets that lie within. Again, in those deforested areas, was there a potential cure for cancer? We don't know. Again, it's a hot summer day in Texas, and we run inside to our air conditioning, to our shade. Plants do not have that ability, and so what we see is a lot of anatomical and morphological efforts by the plants to avoid these extreme weather conditions. Here, in this vining plant, you can actually see those droopy leaves. Now, it looks like the plant's suffering, but in some cases, plants will actually draw their leaves down to reduce their surface area so that they don't feel the effects of the heat as badly. And that's what you see here in this plant. It's actually shading itself from a hot summer day. Ultimately, plants are the ultimate source of food on this planet. Even if you eat nothing but meat, that meat eventually had to eat plants at some point in time. Here we are doing an important restoration of a community garden, which is also very important for society. And it's fun to learn how to grow plants. Take a leftover from your salad and throw it in the garden and just see what happens. We can also tell a lot about the history of an area by looking at the plant life. Each one of the crooks in these palm trees indicates a time of stress in the life of those palm trees. So we can look at this picture of palm trees and see a little bit about the history of that area. You can also discover the history of an area by looking geologically into fossilized plant pollen and seeds. Plants are also very important to study because they represent cultural identity. This lotus flower is very important in Buddhist cultures, talking about the emergent flower as a representation of the path to enlightenment. If you look in your own cultures and decide what plants are important, you might find some very neat discoveries. Obviously, a Christmas tree would be one, maybe even pumpkins during Halloween. But plants represent important cultural symbols and religious symbols as well. Plants are not wholly undefended. Plants will create chemical defenses and obviously physical defenses as depicted here to help protect themselves against being eaten. Or, in the case of chemical defenses, a lot of time it will prevent other plants from coming in and stealing their resources. Plants are not always the good guys. Here you have kudzu vine. Kudzu vine is taking over this entire hillside. Everything that is underneath that kudzu vine blanket is going to die. So plants can be a problem as well as a good guy. I mean, who is going to be able to boat in an area like this taken over by aquatic weeds? Who could grow their crops in this area taken over by weeds? It's going to reduce the crop yield. It's going to reduce the amount of fruit and flowers that are in this environment. And when you talk about endangered species are greatly affected by some plant problems. Sometimes even a good plant that belongs in an area can sort of escape and become a problem. What I have pictured here is known as a cedar. It's actually a juniper, a plant that actually belongs in Texas. However, in a lot of cases, the cedar or the juniper has escaped, and it's escaped its natural bounds to become a very big problem. One of the biggest problems with the cedar or the juniper is it's a water hog, and it tends to reduce the amount of surface water we find in our areas. So in some cases, here we have to eradicate a native species that has otherwise affected the landscape. This is obviously an exaggeration, but plants will take back nature fairly quickly. Again, related to the idea that plants are food, we can look to plants for a lot of different sources of nutrition that you may not think of. We think of kale. It has more iron than beef, more calcium, milk, and more vitamin C than spinach. Sort of a superfood. So if you are looking to supplement your diet, look to the plants. And they're also the source of some cheesy jokes. I'm so fond of you. If you don't understand that joke, that's fine. Once we get past the ferns and fern allies, you will. And plants can just flat out be cool.